Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
In just a matter of seconds, you're going to hear a classic episode of this show from back in the day when we called ourselves Movies We Like.
It took us a while to settle into the show's format, so you'll notice some differences as you listen to these episodes. For instance, it takes us a bit of time to actually get into the conversation about the movie. Things like that.
But we're still proud of the conversations about the movies themselves, and we think they're worth keeping in the library.
So enjoy these episodes from our back catalog. And you can become part of our Discord community, learn more about the show, and find out how you can become a supporting member at thenextreel.com.
So thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to The Next Reel. We appreciate your time and attention, and we hope you enjoy the show.
A little bit slow on the draw tonight, are we?
I guess so.
A little bit slow.
Considering we're early. Yes,
I know.
So.
This is so great. This is going to be a great show because we're both so awake.
That's right. Now that it's sleeping on the job, like normal.
What do you got going on with yourself this week? You know what we should talk about? Go ahead. You first.
Let me think.
Go ahead.
Oh, I don't know. What should we talk about?
We're going to talk about Spider-Man, just briefly.
Oh, Oh.
Don't you think?
Well, it's going to be hard to be brief.
We got a little bit
but
brief.
I can do it. I can do it.
I mean, we say it's out, it's new. We're not doing a film board on it. Doesn't it deserve just a little bit of talk?
Sure. Let's give it a little bit of talk.
All right. So, what'd you think?
I was I was kind of disappointed. I really thought that Electro was pretty bland as a villain. I didn't care for his character development. I didn't care for the arc that they tried to give him. I just felt like they tried to force some transformation on him, being a Spider-Man lover to all of a sudden being an enemy. I just didn't buy into any of that. I really, really liked Green Goblin, and I could have just done a whole film of Green Goblin. That was the part that really was the most exciting part of the movie for me. And as far as Rhino goes, I actually really like how they brought Rhino into it, but I am really bothered that they used it in advertising in any way, shape, or form. I think it would have made it really exciting if they had not ever shown it, and it was actually a big surprise at the ending.
Totally agree on that point.
Not that I'm giving away the ending, but hey, yeah. I just did.
I totally agree on that point. I think that was a betrayal of the of a great moment in the film in terms of great moments. And I say that like with quotes around it because I'm like you. I was ultimately disappointed in the film, and I think I think the reason I was disappointed is because is probably because of context. Now that we had this long conversation about what Marvel was doing, with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and in that respect, whatever you think of the individual entities, I think what they're doing is taking a lot of risks with sort of changing the way we look at some of these stories. And I really like where they're going with these stories, and to see Sony come back with this version of Spider-Man that gives us really functionally no evolution over Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man of a decade and a half ago. I mean, it feels like it just a sad state of stagnation for the property, and it makes me sad. I think the visuals were stunning. I think a lot of the major set pieces were a lot of fun. I really enjoyed some of the visuals. I thought it was quite a ride, but they were tied together with same stuff, different day.
I kind of agree with that. I do think that they did some different stuff than the Tobey Maguire. Unfortunately, I felt like the stuff that they actually did do, I agree. I think that the actual Spider-Man stuff of him swinging and kind of almost that first-person POV, or it felt like a GoPro attached to him at times as he was swinging through the city. I loved all of that.
Yeah, that was fun.
I really felt like they did something really exciting there. But I felt that the character development between Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy is where I really was just like, I felt like there was just they were going for just kind of this kind of hipster couple, and I don't know. I think this is the one where I really kind of could feel the Mark Webb-ness of it after something like 500 Days of Summer. I just felt like I just don't feel like they're nailing the Peter Parker aspect of Peter Parker. And I don't feel like I feel like, the whole with great power comes great responsibility is such a key part of Spider-Man. I feel like they finally hit that kind of at the toward the end of the film. But I don't feel like they I don't know. I just don't feel like it was ever as present as it should have been.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think, the last, when we talked about the first Amazing Spider-Man, I think the thing that we were excited about was, what Andrew Garfield brought to Peter Parker. Not necessarily what he brought to Spider-Man, but to the character of Peter Parker. That was sort of a new angle, and it was the stuff I think I remember we were most excited about. And that the relationship that he had with Gwen Stacy was an interesting one there. And I think it's ironic now that the most interesting character stuff for me in Amazing Spider-Man 2 was the buddy stuff when, Peter Parker and Harry Osborn are palling around throwing rocks. I mean, I loved the way their conversation changed, the way their sort of tone and demeanor changed, and I thought that was just a really interesting, although brief, bit of exploration of these two, former buddies. I don't think it was set up quite well enough. Like we're given to take an awful lot for granted. Just in terms of their history, but I really liked that exchange, and I'm totally with you. The relationship between the Goblin and Peter Parker is one that has been grossly underplayed in all the Spider-Man movies, in my opinion, and I think that that Dane DeHaan is probably really well equipped to do that if they just sort of give him a shot.
Well, and hopefully they will, because clearly with this one, they're building it up for that Sinister Six with him building the team, which is something that I believe does happen in the other one, and or in the comics. I'm excited to see where they go with it. I just. I wish they had found a way to tell a better story, and I wish that they had just done just Green Goblin and cut out Electro entirely.
Yeah, Electro was tough. Although I kind of get it. They want to expand the universe of villains. I kind of get that feeling, and they need to explore enough villains in this movie if they really are going to set up the Sinister Six. Because Electro's not going to get as much screen time in the Sinister Six because they'll have more villains to introduce. So I sort of get it. Plus, he's visually exciting. He's a good-looking villain, and I think they did some cool stuff with him.
Well, he certainly looks better without the stupid costume that he had in the comics, with the stupid yellow lightning bolts coming off of his mask and stuff. Like the costume one, the cartoon one, and both in the cartoon and the comics, I always thought just looked so silly.
I did too. I agree with you.
Yeah.
All right, so fair to middling, but I'm not in a big hurry to see it again.
No, it is a shame. I wish that it was better, but what are you gonna do?
All right. So is that it for old business?
That's it.
Wow, yes, we got super serious really fast just now, just on this show. Super serious.
That's right. Spider-Man equals serious.
Let's tell the people where we're from.
Let's.
Hey, everybody, it's The Next Reel. I'm Pete Wright. That's Andy Nelson.
Hey.
And we spoil movies. If you didn't get that already, we spoil all of the movies. And so you should see the movies that we talk about before we talk about them, as many of you are doing, we hope. And we're getting some great comments. What's the latest round of comments? We introduced a listener to a terrific film in our conversation last week.
Yeah, I believe it was Ben Lott, and he left us a wonderful comment over on our website.
He sure did, and Ben was, I think he was with me on The Matrix, but he's with you now on Das Boot.
I think so. As far as
so we're 1-1.
That's right. The great length debate. I think I won out on that one.
I've been really reflecting on that, and I think, I still think that you're wrong. But
oh, see, when you start with something like, I've been really reflecting on that.
Anyway.
You
you can find out more about the show at thenextreel.com. You can read the blog stylings of the goodly, kindly, once and future king, Steve Sarmento. And just catch up with all of us over on our various social profiles, Facebook, Twitter, Google+, wherever you want to chat about movies. Or like the goodly, kindly Ben Lott, just comment on the blog, which is a great place to do so. We sure appreciate that. So
sure.
Let's do a little catch-up. I'm going to say, not the greatest week for our outsmarted, guess the movie, pony prize, Steve Smart versus the People competition.
It's one of those tricks. When you start putting faces up,
that's it.
inevitably someone is going to kind of put two and two together and figure out whose face is whose. And sure enough, Cameron L. Ryan was able to pinpoint it on the third image for Out of Sight. And so she nailed it. She is entered to win our Pony Prize for that week.
Out of Sight. What a great film.
It is a great movie. I'd love to watch that one again. I haven't seen it in a while.
I know. It's been too long. A lot of memorable. But it was a great pick because this was Clooney's birthday, right?
That's right. That was, I believe his birthday was Tuesday, was it? Or Wednesday? I'm forgetting now.
But don't get used to that because, I don't think it's just going to be a Pony Prize of actors whose birthday is that week.
Yes,
I think it's safe to say a lesson has been learned. So, no birthdays and no architecture. That is also for Cameron L. Ryan.
That's right. We're on to you.
That's awesome. All right. Let's do trailers.
I want to go first. I'm pretty excited about this one, especially
you can't even wait 2.5 minutes.
I can't, especially since we had our found footage series not too long ago, and as those of you who listen to those episodes know, I certainly was struggling trying to find a good found footage trailer to talk about every week.
That this had come out just weeks prior.
But c'est la vie. Anyway, it is here today. It is the trailer for the film As Above, So Below, which I have to say, I really like that title. There's something really, really kind of just unsettling about it.
And it so goes with the poster of the Eiffel Tower upside down.
Everything about it just is very creepy looking. And I mean, it's the whole idea of it is the fact that there are these catacombs under the city of Paris. And, people have explored some of them, but word is it is a much larger network and web of catacombs than people realize. And this trailer is about a group of, 20-somethings who basically set out to kind of explore them. And of course, it's almost like The Descent in a city setting is really what it feels like. They have to crawl through these tight, tiny tunnels. Inevitably, there's a cave-in. They can't go backwards, so now their only option is to go forward. And of course, there's all these creepy inscriptions on the wall, like "Through here lies the gates to hell," and cheery things like that. That really, you don't really want to go through.
It's just like The Descent. If the caves could see your soul.
Yeah. Well, some might say that about The Descent.
Uh-huh.
It's there.
It's grim.
Yeah. So this one looks just downright creepy because definitely there is that satanic, hellish element of, pulling the darkest parts of these people's psyches out and basically putting it on display for them as they tour through these catacombs under the city, and it's horrifying. It's really horrifying. So I'm quite excited to see it. And it's interesting. At the end of the trailer, they say, go to YouTube and type Paris catacombs, and there's all these like videos like "Man Gets Lost in the Catacombs of Paris," part 1 of 2. Oh. There's like an actual TV show about this guy who filmed himself as he was wandering the catacombs. Now, I have no idea if that's just part of their marketing plan, but according to the YouTube site, it was uploaded in 2010. I don't know if they had the foresight to upload it that far back, but there certainly are a number of creepy videos. Ghost Adventures, Paris Catacombs, Season 9. So apparently there's a whole season exploring the catacombs under Paris.
Okay, see, that goes along with shooting films in shot order over decades in order to get real aging of actors.
Right.
If you're going to make a movie, you need to really start uploading your guerrilla promotional material a decade before you actually start shooting.
That's exactly.
That's going to be the new thing. Somebody is already doing it, and we just won't know it until 2020.
That's right.
Unless it was this film.
That would be
in which case we just gave it away.
That's right.
They produced a 9-season television show just as marketing for this movie. Brilliant.
Creepy.
Uh-huh. I can't wait to see it. I think it actually looks great, and I was a big fan of The Descent. And I don't usually like those movies, although more and more of them are coming out that counter that.
That's right. And for people who did like Quarantine, this is directed by John Eric Dowdle and who co-wrote it with his brother Drew. So they're back in the saddle doing some more found footage stuff after their failure of working with M. Night Shyamalan, Devil. That was not a good movie.
Okay, then. All right, my turn.
Wait.
Go ahead. No,
this one opens
really.
August 15th.
Oh, good.
Get that out there.
Okay, I'm going to tell you about my bittersweet relationship with my film.
Is it bittersweet?
It is, but yes, it is. I think this is a great movie. It's called Filth. It is written and directed by John S. Baird and stars James McAvoy, Jamie Bell, Eddie Marsan. It looks fantastic. A bipolar, bigoted, junkie cop manipulates and hallucinates his way through the festive season in a bid to secure promotion and win back his wife and daughter. It's a real homespun treat. James McAvoy is great. I have seen exactly half of it. Wow. It is on iTunes. It's not in theaters yet. It opens in theaters on the 20... Well, no, it says it already opened, but that's not actually true. It opens in theaters on May 30th, but it's in iTunes right now. And I was at a friend's house who had rented it, and we watched exactly half of it, and I had to leave after that because of children. Right? And so I've seen half of it. I don't know how it ends, but I had a blast during the first half. It is crazy and totally worth seeing. That's all. That's what I'm going to say. So it's going to be in theaters on May 30th, and you should totally see it.
I have to say, seeing Eddie Marsan in the bar at the
all
end,
of that.
That's the trailer.
Yes.
A side of him I've never seen.
Eddie Marsan is terrific. Terrific. So, Filth, James McAvoy. And James McAvoy is, I think he's just terrific in almost everything he does. I even liked him in the thing where he could throw bullets sideways.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I know. I had a ball. That's on my guilty pleasure list. I'm not kidding.
Yeah, that definitely was one you should feel guilty about.
You're a guilty pleasure.
It had its fun moments. Wow. That's what I tell my wife all the time.
Oh, hey.
Whoa.
Oh. Okay, so yeah, it's terrific. So go see it. That's the end of my story.
And scene.
And scene. Call me Snake.
New York, 1997. The entire city is a walled maximum security prison. The bridges are mined. The rivers are patrolled. And the United States Police Force has everything under control, they think.
I'm going in.
John Carpenter's Escape from New York, the high adventure of the future. One man must go in where no man has ever gotten out. And if he comes back alone, his nightmare has just begun.
Who are you?
John Carpenter's Escape from New York.
Heard you were dead.
John Carpenter's Escape from New York, the greatest escape of them all, is about to blow the future apart.
Okay, so Andy, I got to tell you something about this film.
Okay.
It's a really, really terrible film. and yet, I get great joy out of watching it. It's a terrible film.
No, there's a lot of problems with it. This is not one of my favorite John Carpenter films, but it is a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun. Yeah. It's dumb fun is what this movie is.
It is, yes. Yes. So we're still in our 1981, we're in our 1981 series, and it feels like we're climbing a mountain. On Escape from New York, written and directed by John Carpenter, actually co-written by John Carpenter and Nick Castle, who is, I think, more or less widely known as the man behind the mask.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're supposed to take it.
Halloween.
Yes. See how we finish each other's sentences just like an old married couple?
That's exactly what it's like.
Yes. And he doesn't look anything like like he would fit behind that hockey mask.
No, he doesn't.
Like I expect his face to be like round with little holes in it.
And what's funny is Nick Castle went on to become a director as well, directing The Last Starfighter, which I absolutely love.
Yeah.
But sadly, also directing Dennis the Menace, Major Payne, Mr. Wrong. Some films that you just don't want to associate with.
I know. Last Starfighter and then downhill from there. Although, what did we think of The Boy Who Could Fly? Was that one I should remember?
I remember it. I watched it when it came out, and I don't think it's a movie I would ever want to go watch again because I have a feeling it's really not good.
Yeah. Well, so here's the thing about Escape from New York. So, the whole conceit, the movie Escape from New York takes place in post World War III America, and that happens in 1997.
Mm-hmm.
So I just, in terms of a walk down memory lane, I thought I wonder what happened in 1997. Because I sort of forgot, and I wanted to see just how well did they get it? Did they get it right? And so I thought I'd just look up a couple of things that happened in 1997.
Okay.
Right. Well, Bill Clinton was elected and inaugurated for his second term.
Okay.
He was inaugurated for his second term.
So he would have been the one who had to get broken out of New York.
That's it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The economy was doing quite well over the course of the year. It closed over 8,000 for the first time. It crashed and then gained again, and so lots of records on the Dow. San Diego, Heaven's Gate. We had the Heaven's Gate cultist commit mass suicide. That was a dark march.
Kind of New York, Escape from New York-ish.
That's kind of what it felt like. Although, it was a big year for the Hale-Bopp comet. I don't know if you remember Hale-Bopp hysteria.
Yes.
It was everywhere. And let's see. Oh, the Labour Party in the United Kingdom, right? Returns Tony Blair, puts Tony Blair in the seat of Prime Minister. And then just months later, the House of Commons votes for a total ban on handguns, which, interestingly, is a precursor to the totally absurd 24 Live Another Day that just launched last night on Fox. That show is full of crazy handguns in London. Crazy amounts of handguns. Everybody's got a handgun.
Yep. Illegal. Gangsters, all of them.
The biggest news, the Star Alliance is formed. Can you tell me what that is?
Yes. Star Trek.
No. That's not it.
That's...
No, you're totally wrong.
That's going to sound so cool, and now he sounds so not cool.
No, yeah, you're not cool. Although Star Alliance is actually not as cool as it sounds. It's the thing when you fly on United. It says part of Star Alliance.
Wow.
Right? But do you know the airlines that make up Star Alliance?
Well, United.
Uh-huh.
I don't know.
Air Canada, low-hanging fruit, right? Lufthansa, and then these two had me, Scandinavian Airlines System and Thai Airways International. So there's that. That was a big year.
I guess.
Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. The first Harry Potter was published in Britain, in London. Hong Kong went back to China. Fen turns out causes heart attacks. Princess Diana. Right? Trouble.
Wow. That was...
It was all over Iraq, the disarmament crisis. It was all about the UNSCOM inspectors, all trying to do the weapons stuff and looking for the chemical weapons in Iraq. The first color photograph appears on the front page of the New York Times.
Wow.
Huh? And...
Boy, they were behind the times. Color
right?
printing was invented so much longer ago.
In Des Moines, Iowa, Bobby McCoffey gives birth to septuplets in the second known case where all 7 babies are born alive and the first in which to survive infancy. Septuplets. And of course, James Cameron's Titanic, the highest grossing film of all time until his other film, Avatar. But at the time, 1997, Titanic hit in December of that year.
Do you think they screened it in the New York prison?
I don't know.
Do they have a way to get prints in and out?
So, as far as I can tell, nothing about James Cameron's 1997 actually plays out.
You mean John Carpenter?
John Carpenter's. Yes, right. Sorry. John Carpenter's 1997 actually is remotely related to the real 1997.
But I was thinking about that because I'm like, okay, this was 1981 though. You have to give him some credit. And he wrote this in like 74. So he wrote it a long time ago. So putting it 16 years, even from when it was released in 1981, putting it 16 years into the future, I mean, that's like someone telling a story that takes place in 2030 that would come out this year. I mean, it's entirely likely that we could say between now and then World War III had happened and all, New York was a prison system and all this. I mean, I can see that 16 years into the future, people could do that. And, it's certainly, I mean, it's easy to go, what was it? The Fifth Element was like 300 years into the future or something that's clearly outside of our lifetime. So we're never going to quite know how accurate he got it. But, so I kind of dismiss that.
Well, and that was, I know, and I'm sort of, of course, this is tongue in cheek. The most interesting thing about it, I mean, I think as a filmmaker, it's a much safer play to go further into the future. And in fact, as a futurist film, I think Escape from New York works better with a date further into the future, 100 years into the future rather than 16. And I think maybe filmmakers are getting increasingly conservative when they talk about futurist films. Mostly, I think, because the technology allows to do more future-y things than they could in 1981. But the other piece of this, which I think is worth talking about, is the basis. The cultural basis on which he worked to create Escape from New York. I mean, this film was his response to Watergate.
Yeah.
And I agree, I think, with those who had trouble seeing this as anything more than just an emotional response to Watergate. On behalf of John Carpenter, like that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
That's what it, yeah. No, I think that it's great that he pulled that out of that. But
I don't see that. But I was interested in your take on it because I didn't grab it.
No, I didn't either. But that's, I think the nature of storytelling, and this is something that I always talk about in my screenwriting class is, you can pull your idea from anything, from news headlines, from dreams you had, from stories somebody told you, wherever it comes from. But it doesn't have to be that story. It doesn't have to be exactly as it was presented to you. That is just the germ of an idea, and now you can take that and you can kind of grow it like a tree, and it could go into something totally different. And I think this is a perfect example. Here's a guy who saw Watergate and clearly had his own opinions politically about what it meant for the country, where it was going to be sending us, all of that. And from that, it tapped him into a place where he was able to kind of conceive this future world and write this script and tell this really kind of just silly, fun story about Snake Plissken trying to rescue the president out of this giant prison that New York has since become. And so I find that completely not apparent when I hear that that's where he got the story idea from. But to me, that doesn't matter at all, because what matters is that it's a perfect example of how something that's happening in the real world can be the germ of an idea that turns into something that really has become quite the cultural kind of, I don't know if I'd call it a phenomenon, but it certainly is kind of a cult classic in its own right. It certainly has developed its own following, and there are people who follow the adventures of Snake Plissken, not just in this movie and in the sequel, but in comic books and just all these other stories that that it has since kind of garnered.
Yeah, okay. I'm totally with you on all of that. I think what's interesting to me, there's a practical point to that, which is the way I understand it, the film was turned down initially because people didn't see the connection to his pitch that it was based on his reaction to Watergate, and yet when the film finally gets made, it is a film that celebrates so many of the cultural issues at play when we talked in 1970, or we talked about the films in 1976, that there is a cynicism, a suspicion of power and, government and law enforcement, and that there is a general drift toward the ruggedness of the street. And in this case, they went far beyond just the natural sort of culture of the street, and they manufactured this sort of amped up experience of the street by making the street an actual prison, not just a figurative, oh my gosh, I can't escape the street. It is an actual prison, the street. And it's the street of the island of Manhattan, which has been walled off. And I think that ends up being, an interesting thing. And it's what sort of screams to me that I kind of hope somebody picks this up and remakes this movie.
Well, yeah. I mean, this is
one, right? This is one.
This is, but see, the challenge with a film like this is I think that it developed from that cynicism, and it developed from the kind of the zeitgeist of the time. And what I'm afraid of is that somebody who came along to remake it, it's just like the remake of Straw Dogs, which I mean, it may be unfair of me to even talk about since I never saw the remake. But I'm a big fan of Peckinpah's original. And it has this darkness and this tone to it that really creates this dark vibe all the way through the film. The remake, it's like the filmmakers, from my understanding, is they pretty much kept the story, but they just don't get into the feeling that it created. They don't have a sense of what it was that led to the creation of that film. They were just remaking a movie to tell it, basically. And I'm afraid of this getting remade, where they're going to have to find ways to make it feel a little more modern and edgy, and they're not going to tap into any of that the dark cynicism that came with the original. Now, I could be wrong, but based on remakes that have been coming out recently, I don't feel like there's a good track record for them, and I'd be hard pressed to wish that this would get remade only to have it be just another RoboCop or another Total Recall or Straw Dogs.
Yeah, Total Recall is case in point.
But if it gets in the hands of the right person, maybe it could. I know they had been talking about doing a remake for a while. I think was it Gerard Butler was actually slated to play Snake Plissken, and Kurt Russell actually came out and said, he's a great actor. I think that's fantastic, but I have to say that something about the film that I've always felt, that holds very true with this particular story is that Snake Plissken is an American and needs to be played by an American. And I can definitely see that. And, that one fell through. And my understanding is there's not, I think last Joel Silver had purchased it. Jason Statham and Tom Hardy, two other Brits, were in talk to play Snake. I don't think anything is happening with it, as far as I know, though.
Do you agree with his assessment? Because what that says to me is that this is a naturally American story. Do you agree with that?
I do to a certain extent, but then again, wasn't where was Donald Pleasance from? Was Donald Pleasance British? I'm feeling like he is.
But so.
I could be wrong, but he played president of the United States, for Pete's sake. I mean, let's see. Yeah, he was born in the UK. Yeah. So it's one of those things where John Carpenter certainly didn't feel stuck with having to have an all-American cast in Escape from New York the first go around. I think that in general, our society is so much a mishmash anyway. I don't think it matters too much. Honestly, I think British people, Australians, I think people from all over the world have become so good at kind of portraying Americans, and likewise Americans portraying people from other countries, that I don't know if it matters that much to me, as long as they get the character right. To me, Snake Plissken is one of those characters that just, he's got this vibe, this kind of this apathy, this anger, this coolness, this attitude that I really like in Kurt Russell. I think he just creates such a great character here. And it is one of those characters I feel like, okay, I don't care if it's an American actor playing it, as long as they nail it.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about Kurt Russell's Snake Plissken. What is it about Snake that you think is affable in this sort of, when thrown into this crazy prison universe?
I don't know. It's just one of those things where he's kind of this character who just doesn't seem to care. He's got an interesting backstory that's kind of summed up in one sentence that Lee Van Cleef has with him early on when he's first brought in, about how he flew you flew a gull fire over in the battle for Leningrad or something like that. He throws this little line out there, hinting at his World War III veteran background, which provides really interesting story that I think would be, I don't know, just it strikes me as a very interesting place that this guy's coming from. And now here he is just robbing banks, and he's kind of, in a way, one of those, I can see the story. Like that's what I love about backstories like this, where it's thrown out as one line, and then I get to kind of create the rest of it in my head, where I see, okay, so he comes back with some form of PTSD. He was let down by the government, and now he's kind of, acting out against it, and he's just robbing banks, and the government failed him, so he's just gonna take advantage of the system, and he gets caught and brought into this prison. And even at the end, it's like he gives the president one chance to prove to him that he's more than just a representative of the government, and he's not going to be just the same old president who's going to fall into the trap. But the president doesn't. The president falls into that trap, and that's why that ending of the film, I think, is so great, because the way that Snake Plissken plays it.
Yeah, I agree, and it's one of those sort of iconic twists, right? And it's one of those iconic twists that keeps playing out in media, and whether it's a gladiator story or the browncoats in Serenity. We have this this universe of the betrayed hero, and I really like it. I think this is one of those areas, and I at the risk of sounding repetitive, where I think that this is going to sound weird, right? I'm not sure that he's tough enough. Right? And of course, in 1981, he was the tough guy, and he was the iconic tough guy. And this is another thing where my fantasy world, we create an even more grit. I mean, the film sort of looks like, kind of a stage production.
Right.
But I really like the idea of this character who is, betrayed, caught, and has enough, has enough stacked against him that he has to take on this impossible job. They inject him with these capsules, tracking bomb capsules into his neck, and so there's our ticking clock, and they give him a fantastic digital watch.
That is fantastic.
In order to count down the time that he has left, and it is incredibly accurate. And then they send him into prison. And when they get into prison, it turns out they're actually on a set of a David Bowie video.
Yeah, New York is definitely an interesting looking place. The first guy who comes out before Plissken gets there, I don't even know what his name is, but he's the guy who is kind of the assistant for
Isaac Hayes, yeah,
for
the
Duke, right? But his assistant is just just really, really creepy, but has kind of like that Bride of Frankenstein hairdo,
Yeah.
with like his sharpened teeth
and
it's
the
just,
laugh.
yeah, just yeah. I mean, there are elements of this that feel very dated, and I feel like they could now, if they do get around to actually doing a remake, they could find ways to make possibly a more convincing future. Again, this is me looking at it from here rather than from 1981.
That's the truth. Although I think it really celebrates all the things that were terrible about us being essentially children of the 80s.
Yes.
I mean, those were our sort of formative media years, and I think that's a real problem.
Yeah.
This is the era that gave us, Batman, the Batman 3.
Yeah, there's something, I feel like now they're better at picking something in the future and giving somebody a look that feels more futuristic. Whereas in the past, when they give someone a futuristic look, they might give them different clothes and stuff, but their hairstyle still feels very period. Like even looking at Star Wars, I mean, all of their hairstyles, everything looks so futuristic except for like Luke's shaggy 70s do,
right?
And Han Solo's shaggy do. I feel like those were things that they had hard time letting go with, or maybe the actors just like, I'm not cutting my hair for your movie.
Yeah,
who knows?
But and then you have films like 2001, that play a futurist sort of science fiction role in a way that doesn't look dated.
Right.
Obviously the technology, the computers themselves have changed, but the interface to HAL is something that actually, we are seeing modeled technology of today off of, so it's, I think it's possible. And in this case, it's almost celebrating too much of, or bringing in too much of the present, and just painting it neon.
Yeah.
That makes it just sort of ugly and garish and not really believe. I mean, this thing was dated by 1991, not just not just today. It was dated almost immediately.
Well, and I think that goes to speak about the low budget quality that went into the actual production of this. I mean, John Carpenter, he had a decent amount of money, but it wasn't anything to write home about. And that's definitely something that shines through in a movie like this, where you're trying to create this future. And I did see that in some of the reviews that people said. It's just like, okay, you're creating this future world, and you're kind of halfway there. You're creating an interesting idea, but you're not actually giving us the look that really should go with it. And coming out of that indie world like he had come from, that I think is a hard lesson to kind of be taught, and find a way to create a very believable New York prison city. I mean, every time I see it, it's like, why? I mean, there's so few people there. I mean, there's just so many things that it looks barren. It looks empty. It looks, not like not that scary. I mean, it's scary. You've got like the rat people crawling out of the dark and stuff like that. But I don't know. On the whole, it's not as scary as like a prison city could be.
I wonder what, for example, the adjusted budget would have looked like comparing this to, say, Clockwork Orange, right? Which was made, I think, 1970, 69,
70, so, yeah,
70,
right
71, somewhere in there, right? And it was made for less. It looks like 2.2 million, 1971.
Oh, there you go. A decade earlier
For $2.2 million in $71.
How long was that? Well, let's see, what was so 2.2 million?
Uh-huh.
So that would have been 12,650,000 in today's dollars.
And what I know we're jumping to numbers early, but I find it interesting because A Clockwork Orange, I think, does set an interesting sort of crime scene in a city and captures this weird, right, dystopian future Britain, and does so in a way that I find is it fits the story, even if it may come off as a little bit dated. It fits the story in a way that's still uncomfortable to watch 40 years later, and doesn't come off as you know. Well,
Escape from New York. Escape from New York had a budget of $6 million in 1981 dollars, which today's dollars is 15.3, almost $15.4 million. And Clockwork Orange had $2.2 million in 1971 dollars, which is 12.6. So with less money, they were, and a longer movie, they were able to make a more believable future. Is essentially what you're saying.
That's what I'm going to say. I don't know if I'm right. How does that hit you?
I think it feels pretty good. I mean, it's one of those things where, like you said at the beginning, I mean, Escape from New York, you're kind of comparing a film that really kind of had a date marked in the film that has since come and gone, which might make it a little more it might be easier to judge because it came out. There was a 1997 that happened. There had not been a World War III, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas Clockwork Orange is creating a much more dystopian society that is not a future that I think that we're on track with, at least as far as like if you read the book and the way they talk with the droogs and everything. I mean, it's a very difficult kind of book and movie to get through because you have to kind of adapt to this language.
Right.
But I don't know. It is actually a very interesting point that I think can be a fair assessment coming from John Carpenter, who, he was kind of born in the low budget world, the indie world, and when he was given in today's dollars $15 million, clearly didn't meet the levels that a master like Stanley Kubrick was able to do with his $12 million in today's dollars 10 years earlier. Now, Stanley Kubrick had done some much larger, much more intense films, and so it's a fair assessment. I kind of agree with you.
I just bring it up because, immediately after this, he did The Thing, right? I mean, the next year, The Thing comes out. And I think The Thing does achieve what I'm talking about here, right? I mean, he had more money to make it, I believe.
Yeah, let me see. How much did he have for The Thing? Well, you keep talking.
Well, that's sort of my point. Like, this was immediately in the proximity of Escape from New York, and I wonder just what happened that in John Carpenter that caused him to have this sort of leap. Was it the fact that he's working with a different production design team? Is it just a better script? Is it what is it that causes the sort of magic stuff to kind of fall apart? And I can't shake this feeling when I watch Escape from New York that every time I look at it, I'm like, God, this would be such a great story if it were just better.
Yeah, right. No. The Thing cost $15 million in 82 dollars, which is about $36 million. So he had more than twice the budget that he had for Escape from New York. But I think part of the problem is Escape from New York. I mean, he's talking about a huge city, New York. Once he gets to New York, aside from like landing on the top of the World Trade Center, and there's actually some kind of frightening imagery in this, like the plane flying into the city and crashing in the buildings. That whole thing with the president, and then the World Trade Center, which was just eerie to see again. But once he gets into New York, I mean, they're not even filming any of this in New York City because they couldn't. It's
like Illinois.
Illinois and St. Louis, and I think East St. Louis, and it all just felt small scale. And in a film called Escape from New York, you feel like it needs to have a much bigger scope. And I think that's the difference with this and The Thing. The Thing is a much smaller scale. I mean, sure, it takes place into Antarctica and they're kind of trekking across the ice and all this stuff, but they were able to find an environment that fit with that story that works and makes the context feel that much stronger. In this film, especially when you walk into a film and you've got like the Statue of Liberty's head on the ground in the street. I mean, that was something I think I always tell myself that it's in the film because of that poster. And then every time I watch the movie, I'm just like always kind of like a little disappointed that
that's like the
Statue of
reverse
Liberty's head.
The reverse Quarantine.
Yeah, right. Where the poster is setting you up for expectations that never happen.
A different film.
Right. Although, interestingly enough, it did inspire the Cloverfield filmmakers to actually have that whole thing with the Statue of Liberty's head getting knocked around, which
at least somebody does it.
I know, exactly. But that's one of those things. I mean, I think the poster sets you up for something because the poster looks so badass, and then you watch the film, and it does feel just very small scale, and it's supposed to be a big scale story.
It is, and and I would say, and I feel like again, because of just the nature of how we talk about these things, it's really easy to feel like we're nitpicking, part of the sort of something that was by design. It looks the way it is, it's celebrated the way it is. It's kind of a cult favorite because of how it looks and how it feels, and that's very much the John Carpenter-ness of it. And so it would be a different film if it didn't look like a John Carpenter film. And yet, I mean, it wasn't long after that he does Christine. That he grew a lot in his interpretation of these thrillers and horrors after this film, but I don't know that I would go so far as to say because of it.
I mean, I don't know about this one. I mean, I would say that he did grow in creating really fun characters, characters that were vibrant and really fun to see. I really enjoy Snake Plissken. I enjoy kind of the nature of the characters, kind of the look at society as one that has its pitfalls, and he examines it like he does later in They Live, and it seems to be something that he kind of really enjoys to look at in his films. So I like that. I feel like as a director, he, I mean, I think it was a good lesson, maybe, but it's not one of my favorites, like I said. But it has its merits.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the people in the film, shall we?
Yes.
We got, we have Kurt Russell. We've talked a little bit about him. In the 1980 Circus Magazine article, announcing the film, Kurt Russell rides a new wave in Escape. This is what Russell says about his parts, his and Isaac Hayes in particular. We were just like pirates out on the sea having a good time. The characters that Isaac and I play, says former child star Kurt 30, show a sort of disciplined irreverence the wild ones had, mixed with some punk attitudes of today. Maybe the problem. Snake is a mercenary, and his style of fighting is a combination of Bruce Lee, the Exterminator, Darth Vader, and Eastwood's vocalness. But there's also a lot of new wave to him. Again, harken back to The Problem. His individuality, though Plissken is a convicted robber, Kurt explains, his individuality makes him acceptable to the audience in a heroic way. Darth Vader? Really? Really? We're gonna do Darth Vader? I don't see it.
He was big at the time.
I don't see it. So Kurt Russell, he was coming off of he was, as he mentions here, he had been in some rather upbeat TV roles. He played Elvis in in TV.
In Elvis.
In Elvis, the TV movie. It was very, very popular, and that was just in 1979. And so this film was the pivot point for Kurt Russell to show that he could play something different.
Well, and because he did Used Cars the year right before this, which was a comedy, and Kurt Russell coming off, and we talked about this on The Thing, but I mean, coming off of somebody who was in kind of all the Disney stuff, all the kind of the TV stuff that he'd been in as a kid, even Used Cars, it all kind of had a much more comedy, family-friendly sort of vibe.
It was an aw shucks. I mean, he was an aw shucks actor.
Yeah, and this, I mean, their first choice, I think, for the studio to play was Tommy Lee Jones, because they didn't think that Kurt Russell was right because of the stuff that he had done before this.
Tommy Lee Jones,
Snake Plissken. I
don't see it.
I have a hard time with that one.
I have a hard time with that, but it wasn't Bronson, right? Charles Bronson was in the running, and
he was in the running, and I think John Carpenter felt he was too old for the role,
and that
Probably
he would
rightly so.
lose control of the film with a more experienced actor.
Right.
You know, I think Kurt Russell is probably, you know, I think he's a fine pick.
I think he's great. This is his favorite character that he's done. This is his favorite film that he's done. Yeah.
Yeah, he's an icon.
Yeah, it definitely is.
It's you know, new tattoo artist though. The snake coming out of his pants.
It looks like it was done with a Sharpie.
It really does.
It just it kind of cracked me up.
You got to look at it to see it's a snake.
It is pretty funny. Supposedly there's a story to that snake, and I don't know what it is, but it does pique my curiosity now. I want to know exactly what the story is behind it, because it is a little indie looking.
Wow. Now I want to know too.
I know. And his wife at the time was actually in the film. Susan Hubley was his wife at the time, and she had just given birth to their son. And so she somehow, I guess they were probably, I don't know if she was on set. She was an actress, but she was the one in Chock full of Nuts, the restaurant, when all of the underground rat people start coming out of the woodworks, literally like popping out of the floor and pulling her to her very sudden demise.
This is another bit from the Circus article, Circus Magazine article. Kurt Russell's talking. Season was portraying what will be known as a crime groupie. Russell says with a sinister chuckle. There are, it seems, no rock bands in the penal colony, so the crime groupie is a really hip thing to be in 1997. To Hubley, Plissken, the bank robber, is just like Mick Jagger. Our original concept was to have her wear a T-shirt covered with the names of criminals. The only one not crossed off was going to be Snake Plissken.
That's pretty funny.
Right? Season Hubley.
Interesting.
Okay. So there's Kurt Russell.
That's Kurt Russell.
Yeah. Lee Van Cleef.
Lee Van Cleef, man, I mean, he just looks great and rough, and it's hard to not love little Lee Van Cleef in a film like this.
Lee Van Cleef, yeah, he's done some. He's a good bad guy.
He is. He's got a great look. He really does.
Have we talked about any other Lee Van Cleef films yet?
Not yet. I
think we're going to.
We are certainly going to be talking about them soon.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
He's sort of he represents the man here, right? And he is the space between the wounded hero and the bureaucracy that that wounded him. He is the representation or the manifestation of that wounding, and he puts himself in a place of he is the one that guides the story forward in a malevolent way. You think he was the part was constructed well?
Yeah, I mean it's in the context of this type of story. I mean, this is one of those films, and I'd have to look back before this one came out, but this feels like it has all of those cliche elements in the in the film, like, like you said, the person who's in charge, who's kind of the middleman. He's not quite as bad as the man. He's not quite at the level of the of our hero, and he definitely fits that mold. And that does feel very cliche in some of these types of films. I don't know if it was cliche in 1981 or if this is one of those films that kind of set that
defined the cliche.
Helped define that cliche. But I do find myself just really enjoying him in the role, and even at the end, I feel like he might know kind of that Plissken is up to something more and may not care. I don't know. Maybe that's just me reading into it, but maybe that's just what I want.
Well, and that's I'm not sure where you're going with that, because there is this sense, like, if I were to see the complete arc of Lee Van Cleef's character here of Hogue, he would be the bad guy at the beginning, but by the end he would be transformed.
Yeah, like in my perfect world, he would see the interaction between Snake and the president, and that whole at the end of that, he says, "Screw it," and he walks off with Snake.
Right, or at least makes note of the experience and doesn't take action to stop it, or does something to illustrate that he has learned something on his journey too.
Right.
That's the Hollywood ending, which we don't necessarily get. What about Ernie?
Yeah, our dear friend Marty. It's fun to see him as the cabbie in this. It's not a big role, but I think he does it justice. I think he's fun in the role, and it's great seeing him. It's nice that he was cast in a role like this. Ernest Borgnine is always fun to see on screen, and I thought he was great. That's something I think that John Carpenter could do really well, is find the right people to inhabit these roles. Even if the film itself doesn't necessarily work as well as it should, I feel like he built a cast that was pretty solid all the way through.
I think I liked him better in this than in Marty. How's that?
Oh, there you go. Well,
let me tell you,
this is Marty later in his life. Yeah. Like, if he doesn't end up with a girl, he goes into a life of crime, and he ends up a cabbie in New York prison.
That's awesome. The thing I didn't know about Ernest Borgnine, even though we talked about an Ernest Borgnine movie, I don't think I made the connection that the guy was in SpongeBob SquarePants for 13 years.
Wow, I didn't know that.
He was Mermaid Man.
Holy God.
Nothing?
There you go.
He was only in it over those 13 years, he was in it for 15 total episodes. But still, I don't know about you, but there was a period, and luckily it was short-lived, where my son was pretty hip on SpongeBob.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's easy to get sucked into that show.
Knowing from what experience?
From my children.
Oh, I see. Mm-hmm.
They would have it on. I'd end up, as I'm washing dishes in the sink, I find myself just staring at it. The crazy antics of SpongeBob and Patrick.
Oh, Patrick. Donald Pleasance is, he's the president, sort of forgettable.
Yeah, well, he is, but I gotta say, it was Donald Pleasance's idea to throw the wig on at one point, and I think that moment, more than any other moment with him in the film, is the one that stands out to me.
That made the film.
That they throw this blonde wig on the president just cracks me up. And I do enjoy the moment at the end. I mean, I think that's a great moment when the president pretty much bails on him and everyone that had died in the whole course of trying to get him out. That's one of those moments. I think it's I like that it's an element of the script. I don't think Donald Pleasance necessarily brings anything to it, but I do enjoy that it's in there. But yeah, he's certainly somebody who had been doing a number of projects with John Carpenter. He has been in a lot of his films.
That's the truth.
He's a man who's 225 credits to his name, so he's he's a busy man.
Yeah, he's been around. As has Isaac Hayes.
Oh yeah.
I'm not saying 220 credits, but the man's been around. Isaac Hayes. He was a good, he feels like a little bit of stunt casting in this film to me.
I mean, the parts, if anything, his part is, I think, the weakest.
Yeah.
It's really just a little bit of a kind of a, I don't know, it's just kind of bland that not as much happens with it. I would, I wish that there was more to his character as the Duke, and I feel in a remake that's something that they could really play with, is building up that character more, because Isaac Hayes definitely has some great presence, and not giving much to him other than driving a pimp ass car with chandeliers on the hood because you can. I mean, I feel like I just don't feel like there was much to him, you know?
Yeah.
In fact, there was really nothing to him. He's just mean, he's bad, and he pursues them. And that's really that's it.
Which is too bad, because as long as you're doing a movie like this, and you're establishing a visual universe of New York like this, then you sort of want him to go all the way. And not Isaac Hayes, but maybe George Clinton and the rest of the P-Funk. Like, let's go all the way with these. You put chandeliers on the car, for crying out loud. Like, let's make the bad guy
right
in glory. And I think, ultimately the bad guy in this is I agree with you, is a pretty weak link.
Oh, that's an example of that element of the story that feels like John Carpenter didn't quite have a full grasp of the story that he was telling, and he was so focused on Snake Plissken and his exploits of trying to get the president out that he didn't give any time to develop the bad guy,
to develop to world building.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's actually is an interesting connection. We spend so much time talking about the importance of world building and at what cost. And in this I think is a great example of the cost of forgetting the world that you're in while you're in it. Like I really see after this, just talking about it, that there's a boat that is missed here by Carpenter in his journey to get us back to the ultimate betrayal by the president at the end.
Yep.
Right? It's like he tried to connect those dots too quickly. Oh, I feel better already just having this talk.
Justified.
You want to talk about anybody else that stands out to you? I mean, Harry Dean Stanton, Adrienne Barbeau.
Dean Stanton, yeah, both of those. I think Harry Dean Stanton is great. We've talked about him in Alien. This came not too many years after Alien, and he's just always one of those faces that is great to see on screen because he just has a look, and it's so fun to see him. He's still somebody who's just keeping busy getting stuff made. So I always love seeing Harry Dean Stanton. And gosh, did you know that he was in the Avengers?
No.
He was a security guard in the Avengers.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Wow.
So there. See, he's a man who's everywhere.
Wow.
I tell you what.
Oh man, that makes me sad.
And I know. Come on, he's keeping busy.
I know, he's still working.
That's fantastic. Right. And then Adrienne Barbeau, I think, is just one of those lovely ladies of the 80s, who just was in so many movies in the early 80s that I recall very fondly, like not so much this one, but definitely Cannonball Run was one that I watched countless times when I was young. Swamp Thing. I don't know how many times I watched Swamp Thing, but that was one of my go-to faves as a kid. And Creepshow, like you said, absolutely.
Yeah. It's so good.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. All right.
Another person who still is just very, very actively keeping busy. I mean, she just appeared in Argo a couple years ago, and
that's right.
and she's actually scheduled to be in a film, the title of which cracks me up because it definitely ties into Sam Peckinpah and his films. And I don't know, just everything that has kind of the 80s vibe. It's called Bring Me the Head of Lance Henriksen. The synopsis is: when 80s B-movie icon Tim Thomerson wakes up one day to realize the acting roles are not coming his way anymore, he sets out on a quest to find his former co-star Lance Henriksen to discover his secret of Hollywood longevity and gets more than he bargained for in the process.
That's awesome.
That sounds hilarious. And of course, Lance Henriksen is playing Lance Henriksen.
Of course.
They're all playing themselves.
Because it's like John Malkovich, and like you got to do a eponymous film at some point.
It's pretty exciting.
Oh, we got to talk about Tom Atkins just briefly, who plays an officer, and which fits kind of talk about typecast. Like, go ahead and look at his filmography. He's got 79 credits on IMDb, and more than half of them start with sergeant, captain, or detective, or lieutenant.
Right.
Like, there's a guy who found a role.
Yeah.
And
oh, go ahead.
I was going to say he was on your favorite, the Equalizer. That was your favorite, right? That reminds that to me seems like the genetic precursor to The Shield.
It does. Gosh, that's one of those shows I'd love to actually go back and watch, but I never have.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it's out anywhere, like on DVD or anything. But
I don't know.
Yeah. And then I think we have to mention Stephen Ford is in this.
Yes.
Who is the son of President Ford, and who we talked about on the When Harry Met Sally episode, because he played the love interest, Sally's love interest, who she was saying goodbye to at the airport.
Now, you had some other twists on this film that you wanted to bring up. Little trivia bits. It's
such a minor one, but the fact that this, I think it was actually the first film to film on Liberty Island in New York with the Statue of Liberty, and we can create our little, add this to our list of lists, because now we've got a collection of films that have shot on Liberty Island. We've talked about this, and we've talked about Splash.
All right, I'm making a note.
Look at all these connections, the amazing cinema web that we are weaving before our audience's very eyes.
Real-time weaving, that's what's happening here.
That's right.
Anybody else strike your fancy? Do you want to talk about?
I think that's the other person who's not in the cast, but Deborah Hill was one of the producers on this, who I think was a longtime producer with John Carpenter. And the other person that I wanted to bring up was none other than James Cameron, who worked on this.
Yeah, James Cameron did a bunch of the matte paintings.
Yeah, he was worked in the visual effects department on this. He was a director of photography for some of the special visual effects, and did matte work. And I think it's a shot of one of the shots of the city where you see the helicopter flying, and I want to say it's around the time they're doing the food, or they're talking about the area in the park where they do the food drop. The cityscape behind is a matte painting that James Cameron actually had painted.
Not a bad eye.
Not bad at all.
Not a bad eye. Apparently, did we see there's some uncredited roles in here that
yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis is uncredited as one of the computer voices.
Right. Let's see. I think that was the one that I was forgetting. Jamie Lee Curtis was the one that stood out for me. I can't think of anybody else I don't see anybody else in here that's catching my eye.
Yeah, Deborah Hill, the producer, she was an uncredited computer voice.
Nick
Carpenter,
Castle was playing the piano.
Right. And there were a number, like John Carpenter was uncredited. He was a violin player. He was a helicopter pilot. He's one of the Secret Service guys. So, yeah, I mean, there's little things in there, those little Easter eggs that are fun to find out about. One last thing that I will say.
Yes.
I wish that John Carpenter would find other composers to use other than himself, because Lord Almighty, I have such a hard time. That's something that always dates his films, is his music. I mean, he did a great job with Halloween, creating a really creepy theme that worked really well in the context of that film. But for the most part, John, Ennio Morricone did such a great job with The Thing. Look to that as an example and find other people to do your music for you.
Please. All right. The cinematography. See, now I closed my tab.
Good old Dean Cundey.
Dean Cundey, who's been with him for a long time.
He has been. He's one of those cinematographers who's done a lot of stuff. I mean, he did. We talked about him on our Apollo 13 episode. Right. He's done stuff with Spielberg, Jurassic Park, and Hook. He did Robert Zemeckis, the Back to the Future trilogy, and Who Framed Roger Rabbit. All these ones with Carpenter, Big Trouble in Little China. This one, I mean, he's The Fog. Halloween. He's a guy who's been around for a long, long time. Starting out as a director of photography in 1973. So he's been doing it over 40 years now, and still is working hard and doing lots of great stuff. I say that with the caveat that Jack and Jill is not something that falls into the category of great stuff.
Oh, Andy. You're being hard on old Adam Sandler, aren't you?
I don't think so. I think it is pretty low on the old Rotten Tomatoes rating. And I don't feel
it's not good.
I don't feel that's one of those unjust Rotten Tomatoes ratings. I feel like, it's probably fair to say that it's got the score it deserves.
Oh, that's too funny. All right. Well, do you have any other tidbits you want to bring out or talk about before we get to the rest of our new business?
I think there are a few little things that are worth bringing up. One is just the fact that this is such a film that has drawn such a fan base now, and like I said, it has these just crazy fans who love it. And for those who do, if you haven't heard yet of the Escape from New York and LA page, a tribute to Snake Plissken, it's definitely the page for you, because it's just somebody who loves everything having to do with Snake Plissken and his various escapes that he's done. There's all constant news and updates, chats with John Carpenter, different updates on all these canceled projects, different comic book adaptations, John Carpenter's Snake Plissken Chronicles, just all sorts of stuff that people are doing. There's going to be an anime show that was going to be put together at some point that fell apart. And a game, like all these different things that never quite happened. But this person has created a font of information for you with links, everything you could want regarding either of the films. And that's something we didn't talk about, was the sequel, which is the other thing that I was going to bring up. Is, did you see the sequel? The Escape from LA?
Yeah. I remember very little about it, other than there's like doesn't he get in through like some jet-powered pneumatic tube? Did you see it?
I did. I thought he went in with like in kind of an underwater, like a.
Oh, maybe he's an underwater submarine. I just remember him like being in a very confined space, like in a little like capsule thing.
It was like a capsule submarine. It was like a super tiny one-man James Bond.
That's what it. Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, and he popped up. I can't remember where. I just remember feeling it was pretty abysmal. I remember, wasn't it Bruce Campbell was the like psychoplastic surgeon in that? Yeah. The little things that I remember. And I remember there's like some fake Disney park that just I don't know. I think Steve Buscemi was in it. I don't remember. I just remember feeling like that was an example of trying to recapture the magic and not latching onto the things. Like, I think he was trying to make fun of all the things in LA that you make fun of. In Escape from New York, I don't think they were poking fun at the things in New York that.
No, right.
It was a much more interesting look at society. And actually, that's something we didn't talk about, but I believe 1981 was actually a horribly violent year for New York. I think in the actual city, I think there was a lot of crime and a lot of things going on that year. In fact, I believe there's a new film coming out fairly soon about kind of the violence of New York. I'll have to try to remember gosh, what is the film called? Our favorite Zero Dark 30 lady is in it, Jessica Chastain. If I can remember what it is, I'll let you know. But anyway, it's a film that takes place in this kind of 1981 New York, and it's just really all about kind of this frightening look at everything going on in the city. And it's called A Most Violent Year. There you go.
About 1981 in New York.
A thriller set in New York City during the winter of 1981, statistically one of the most violent years in the city's history, and centered on the lives of an immigrant and his family trying to expand their business and capitalize on opportunities as the rampant violence, decay, and corruption of the day drag them in and threaten to destroy all they have built.
That's fascinating. Wendell Curtis Hamilton, Draunt, and Riggs wrote an academic paper that is entitled "More Drugs, Less Crime: Why Crime Dropped in New York City and the U.S. from 1981 through 2007," and it talks, it anchors specifically on the decline in crime that began at its peak in 1981 in New York City. And plummeted from there. That's fascinating. We didn't talk about that. Obviously, I didn't know.
Yeah.
But that was, when I think about it though, culturally, like I remember, because 1981, what were we? Nothing, right? We were.
Yeah, right. I was too little to even
too
know
little
what New York
to
was.
know. But I do have this overriding sort of sense memory of you don't go to New York because there's a lot of crime there. And when I went to school on the East Coast, I was very, very close to New York City and spent a lot of time in New York City. I was just across the river in New Jersey, but I remember coming from the Midwest, thinking, "Gosh, I think I'm supposed to be scared of living at least in such proximity to New York." None of that ever came to pass. New York was actually quite a dream, but. That's interesting, right?
Yeah, it is.
All right.
And then the last little note that I have is, if you're really hankering for some pizza and you're in San Francisco, you can actually go to a place called Escape from New York Pizza.
And you should take a picture and post it on Facebook if you go.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. That's it. All right. So we've already talked about the dollars, right?
We talked about how much it cost. It did. Let's see. So it cost $6 million to make, and which is about $15 million total. It actually ended up grossing in the U.S. about $25 million, which is about almost $65 million. I don't have any international figures. It's all domestic. But, even just domestic, it ended up making its money back. It made almost $500,000 adjusted per finished minute.
Well, made some money.
Yeah. Hey, it did better than The Thing.
That's a really good point, and a sad testament.
Well, I think the film, The Thing, kind of took audiences by surprise, and that's one that I think has grown in cult status because people have grown to realize how great it is. And I think Escape from New York certainly has its fans, but I don't think and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think it's kind of ended up becoming one of those things that has created, or something that has actually ended up making more money.
Right.
Maybe I'm just completely making that up.
I'm gonna let you hang on that.
Thank you.
All right. All right. I think it's time to rank it.
I think you're right.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel, and you can see all of the films that we have ranked. You can catch you can see our big top 10 list, our top 100, all of the top lists. And I don't know. Here's hoping maybe Escape from New York will crack the vaunted top 100.
We shall see. All right, here we go. Escape from New York or The Bourne Ultimatum?
Bourne Ultimatum.
Absolutely. Escape from New York or Compulsion? Interesting.
Compulsion is a good movie.
Yeah, it is a good movie. Gosh, I might say Compulsion.
It does have that monologue.
It's got Orson Welles. It's got a great monologue. And
there's no great monologue in Escape from New York.
And it's got a great one-liner here or there, but I think I would go Compulsion.
I think I'm going to go Compulsion.
Escape from New York or The Hudsucker Proxy? Boy.
I'm going to do The Hudsucker Proxy.
See, I think I would actually do Escape from New York. The Hudsucker Proxy... Oh,
I know.
It's such a silly I just had a hard time getting into it.
I know you did, but I mean, they're both movies I had a hard time.
Okay,
really
I will actually go with Hudsucker Proxy, and I'll tell you why.
Please.
Because the production values of it create a world. When you're talking about world building,
Yes.
They create a full world in the Hudsucker Proxy. Even though I don't like the film that much, I feel like it's a completely solid world that the Coen brothers created. Whereas Escape from New York, I feel like it was an Ed Wood set. That he was walking around
exactly. And that was the first thing I was going to say is, well, Hudsucker, they finished that movie. They like finished painting all the sets and stuff.
Right.
All right.
Escape from New York or Alien Resurrection.
Oh man.
God, Alien Resurrection has a couple really great scenes in it.
I'm
terrible scenes.
I know.
I have no idea what you're going to go with.
I can't believe that I'm going to go with Alien Resurrection. But again, I think it's on the same premise as the last one. It's just it's a movie that even if you turn the volume off, maybe I should watch it with the volume down. I can get some joy out of just watching it.
Yeah, I mean, I love the character Snake Plissken, but I still feel like Alien Resurrection I feel guilty saying it, but I feel like it is it's a film that gives me a little bit more. Like, I feel like I've had my fill of Escape from New York.
Yeah. Done.
I mean, I probably have had my fill of Alien Resurrection too, for that matter. Escape from New York or Strange Days, getting right down to the bottom.
Oh my
here.
goodness!
I will definitely pick it over Strange Days.
I would also pick it over Strange Days.
I always say, if only I could just have the trailer. Just judge it for the trailer. Escape from New York or The Spanish Prisoner?
Spanish Prisoner.
Yeah. See, I would do Escape from New York. Spanish Prisoner, David Mamet has his stuff, but I don't know. I think on the whole, I just didn't think that much of that film on a rewatch. I felt like it was a little lacking in most places.
I disagree. And I think I feel bad that it is that low. I think I would fight for it more knowing what I know now about this show and about that film. I would have fought harder in our ranking. I think it's too low.
I think you're saying that with time away from it. I think if you rewatched it again, you'd go, oh yeah, it is in the right spot.
Maybe, but I do. Oh, come on. Really?
It's showing me a picture of Rebecca Pigeon, and when you put Rebecca Pigeon up next to Snake Plissken, I'm sorry, but Snake Plissken will win every time.
Oh
in my
my
mind.
God.
Rebecca Pigeon she's not great. I don't know. The story just was a convoluted mess that didn't really lead to anything that was really solid anyway for me.
All right.
If nothing else, you've got a kick-ass poster for Escape from New York.
All right, fine. Although to be fair, I'm looking at a photo right now of the hybrid alien hugging Sigourney Weaver.
Oh man, yeah. Now I feel
whatever.
Guilty. I feel guilty for that choice too. Escape from New York or The Fifth Element?
Fifth Element, hands down.
Man, I would have so much more fun watching Escape from New York again as opposed to watching The Fifth Element again.
But you're going to give me Fifth Element.
I will give you Fifth Element because of world building.
Because it's a team. This is a team. We're on a team. Yeah. And if we have a little faith, we'll see it through.
There you go. 125 out of 131.
It did not, alas, crack the top 100.
It definitely did not.
That's becoming a more interesting goal now that we have, more than 100.
Yeah, but now that we're not 101.
Well, all right. So, it is what it is. I'm glad we did it, but next week we've got substance.
It's definitely a film of substance, yes. Next week is going to be an interesting one it'll be an interesting one to talk about because in a way it's just like, talking philosophy.
Yes, I'm excited about it. So we're going to be doing Louis Malle's My Dinner with Andre.
Yeah.
Wallace Shawn, and Andre Gregory eating
and talking.
Should be good. I'm looking forward to it. It's it's not 3.5 hours long.
If you eat dinner while we're doing the show, you can have my dinner with Andy.
I'm so excited. I'm gonna do that. I totally did. I'm gonna need to call you Andre from now on.
There you go. Too funny.
All right. Hey, good talk.
Yes, indeed.
I'm gonna go to bed. How'd your Amazon pick go this week?
This week, 4 out of 5 stars.
Really?
Yeah. Mr. B.A. said, the way a destroyed New York was pictured made me really think about the human race, the direction we going, and those big, beautiful tatas. I do hope everyone understands who I'm speaking of. Thank you, Mr. B.A.
That's awesome. Wow. I can't beat that. I actually have 2 that maybe I went straight to the bottom.
Oh, wow.
1 star, Save Your Time from David Mathern. Clearly, I did not notice how old this movie was. If you like old, crappy, somewhat of an action movie, this is for you. Old, crappy, somewhat of an action movie. That's Escape from New York.
Oh,
but the other one was from Deepak Jose, who writes, Too bad movie waste of time. Better to go to sleep rather this stupid movie. That was almost a haiku.
Yeah, it almost was. You didn't read the rest of his.
Oh, there. You're right. I didn't. I actually took it literally. There is no more words other than saying really bad.
Oh,
epic.
Amazon.
I love you, Amazon. Good night, Amazon. Good night, Pete.
It is hard to believe that we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
So many great conversations over the years about so many great movies.
And some stinkers.
Well, true. But producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
In Season 3, we covered even more great adaptations like The Night of the Hunter and It Happened One Night, both part of our Couples on the Run series.
We talked about No Country for Old Men. The Coen brothers so rarely adapt someone else's work.
We had some fun rom-com adaptations like About a Boy, based on the Nick Hornby novel, and Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist, adapted from Rachel Cohn and David Levithan's book.
In our terribly and naively named foreign language series, we discussed The Brilliant City of God and The Diving Bell and the Butterfly, which I won't ever be able to watch again, ever.
But could you read the original memoir?
I don't know, maybe?
We had our Richard Dysart series with adaptations like The Day of the Locust and Being There.
Plus, we had that fantastic interview with the man himself.
The one where we had him sit on the floor?
Because this chair was so squeaky. Good times.
We did our first Tom Hanks series with Forrest Gump, adapted from Winston Groom's novel, plus Apollo 13, based on Lost Moon by Jim Lovell.
And we did another year series looking at films from 1981, including Das Boot, Gallipoli, and Thief, all based on books.
Listeners can dive deeper into all of these original stories and more at thenextreel.com/originals. Every book, play,
movie,
video game, You bet. We have talked about some video game adaptations as well. It doesn't matter the source, just follow the link. Every purchase supports the podcast.
Check out the full list at thenextreel.com/originals and get reading, watching, performing, or playing today.